All right, everyone. So good morning. My name is Amber. I'm going to be your host today. Before we begin, just a quick reminder to make sure that you are muted. If you're not sure how to do that, there is a microphone icon at the bottom of your screen. Just be sure and click that and make sure that you're muted during the presentation. You have the choice to keep your video on during today's presentation, but as a reminder, we are recording, so we'll leave that decision up to you. And if you do have any questions during today's presentation, please use the chat feature also located at the bottom of your screen. I will attempt to answer any questions I can during the presentation, and anything more specific that needs to be directed to Craig, I will field those to him during our Q&A portion. So we are ready to begin. Today we're going to learn how to document nature for science and fun using iNaturalist. After Craig's presentation, I hope everyone feels a little bit more comfortable using this resource and will consider participating in the upcoming BioBlitz that the Woodlands Township will be putting on. So we are doing a week-long BioBlitz, June 21st through the 27th, and that is in honor of National Pollinator Week. The Woodlands is encouraging everyone to get outside, observe nature. That can be in your yard, it can be along the pathways or in a neighborhood park. And we're even going to be hosting a one-day in-person BioBlitz on Saturday, June 26th from 8 to 11 a.m. We are going to be over at the Recreation Center at Rob Fleming Park. So we would encourage you to grab your family, friends, neighbors, come down to Rob Fleming. We are going to have some volunteer nature specialists who will be there with some resources and guides on identification and tips for observing, as well as some maps to the area where we'd encourage you to go out and explore. And we will have some people on hand with a little knowledge to help with any technical issues that you might encounter while using iNaturalist. So grab your family, grab your friends, grab your mobile device, and come out and see us on June 26th to do an in-person BioBlitz. To participate, this is something I'll put in the chat feature, but to participate, you want to log into iNaturalist and join our project. And Craig's going to walk you through using iNaturalist. We'll get to that, but in the chat feature, I will put our project title so that you can all find us. And that way, when you're making these observations during this set window of time for our BioBlitz, those are all counted towards that project. And everyone who participates, just so you know, we are giving away some great prizes. So we do have a prize for who does the most observations, who observes the most species, and who observes the most pollinators. And so you want to participate all week long and get a chance at earning some really great prizes. And I guess the bigger question is, how do we make all these observations? So that's why we've invited Craig to join us this morning. Let me tell you a little bit about Craig. So Craig Hensley has worked for Texas Parks and Wildlife for more than 10 years. First as an interpreter with Guadalupe River State Park, and currently as a Texas Nature Trackers Biologist. Craig is a lifelong naturalist and educator, and he has his Bachelor of Science in Fisheries and Wildlife Management and a Master's of Science in Zoology. So Craig, I will turn it over to you and take it away.
Very good. Thank you very much for the invitation to come speak with you all today. We're going to try and cover a lot in a short period of time, and a lot of it will focus on using iNaturalist, talking about BioBlitzes, why they're relevant, how we use the data, and who we are and what we do. So we'll go ahead and jump right into it. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat box, and we'll get to those. I think we'll wait until the end, otherwise we'll get. I will get distracted and we'll end up being here 3 or 4 hours the way I talk sometimes. So we'll try to stay focused here best that we can. First of all, I work with Texas Parks and Wildlife. Specifically, I work with what's called the Community Stewardship and Engagement Team. It's a group of 4 people in our group within the Wildlife Diversity section of Texas Parks and Wildlife. What we do is basically as a group try to help track the status of populations of plants and animals across the state of Texas. And the way that we do that is trying to engage community scientists from all backgrounds, all walks of life, all experience levels, all ages, to try to get folks to get out and help us gather more information about what we have around us, both plant and animal. And as I tell people, you know, every county in Texas has one wildlife biologist that's employed by Texas Parks and Wildlife, but some of those biologists may have 3 or 4 counties that they're in charge of. So they can't by themselves be able to do that. So the nice thing about what we try to do is by getting the larger community engaged, we can leverage that one biologist and gather much more data. And without that information, it's hard to practice good conservation. If we don't know what we don't know, how do we make good decisions when it comes to stewarding our environment? I should let you know that we have our Texas Nature Trackers program has a Facebook page. You can follow along. We do live events periodically, getting out and enjoying nature with in the virtual thing. It started up, of course, because of COVID, and we're continuing to do that. We also have an Instagram page, Texas Nature Trackers, where we post things as well. So if you're interested in following along what we do and some of the things that we get to do, whether it's bird banding or whatever it is, we try to share that information out and educate folks in that manner as well. Specifically, the Texas Nature Trackers program uses the naturalist community, i.e. community scientists, through the app called iNaturalist to gather data. We then vet that data through projects that we that we oversee or are part of, and then we pass that data into the research and conservation community. The whole idea being that eventually it gets into a database so that we know where things are. So we're trying to move high quality, robust data into the Texas Natural Diversity Database. And basically what that is if you're a developer or if you're a DOT or whomever, you can actually access this database, request information about whatever is out there that is what are known as species of greatest conservation need in particular, and we'll talk about what those are in just a moment. But those are our targeted species, and we want to make sure that we know where they are in the state so that if development or whatever is happening out there, people can know about that, so we can either mitigate or try to work around those species as best as possible. We have several iNaturalist projects, which I'll show you here in a moment, to help us log that data through community scientists. So first of all, what is an SGCN, a species of greatest conservation need? This is not just something that Texas Parks and Wildlife made up. This is a national program that identifies plants and animals that are declining or rare and in need of some kind of intervention to try to recover or stabilize their population so that those species don't end up on a list under state or federal regulation, either the threatened list or the endangered species list. We're trying everything we can to make sure that that doesn't happen. Our goal would be that there would be none of those things on those lists. Unfortunately, so far that's not been achievable with just as it is what it is sort of thing. But our goal is to address those specific species. The other thing I should tell you is we just updated our list. You can find it on Texas Parks and Wildlife's webpage by just typing in a search for SGCN Texas, and it'll take you right to that, so you can find out what's going on there through our webpage as well. So who are our SGCNs? It's a variety of plants and animals. Almost 1,300 species are listed, and that includes everything from fish to invertebrates to plants, reptiles, amphibians, birds, mammals, you name it. There are some of those members on the list. So that includes everything from the whooping crane, which a lot of you are familiar with, being where you live, to the Texas horned lizard, a very iconic critter in the state of Texas, to even things as a game animal like the bobwhite quail. The bobwhite is an animal that's been suffering for a long time, and still trying to figure out why their populations ebb and flow the way they do. Even a lot of insects, and especially a lot of pollinators, and with your BioBlitz being done during the week of National Pollinator Week, it's a great way to track the American bumblebee, which is a species of greatest conservation need that has been declining across its range, including here in Texas, due to pesticides, due to habitat loss, those kinds of things all factor in on that. So all of those are just a few examples of what's out there. All of that is done because of something called the TCAP, or the Texas Conservation Action Plan. And this is basically a roadmap that allows us to plan for conservation, focusing on those species. Nationwide, there are over 12,000 SGCNs and about 1,300 here just in Texas. Every plan has this as part of a funding formula. In order for us to get funding for some of the work that we do, we have to have this kind of plan in place. In fact, I was just left a meeting right before I joined this presentation, talking about the next revision of the Texas Conservation Action Plan. So that process is a dynamic one, just like determining who the SGCNs are. That's a dynamic process as well. So it doesn't just go on a piece of paper and then stay there forever. And while I'm talking about that, I want to give a plug for what's known as RAWA, or Recovering America's Wildlife Act. This is a piece of national legislation. And oh, by the way, in case you're wondering, I am a state employee. This is one piece of legislation that we are authorized to be able to promote, because normally that would not be the case. But it's legislation to make supplemental funds available for management of fish and wildlife species of greatest conservation need, as determined by state and fish and wildlife agencies, and for other purposes. So what this is, so most of our funding that Texas Parks and Wildlife, the Wildlife Division, gets is through the Pittman-Robertson Act, which is monies from hunting and fishing. Those monies are distributed to states for conservation. The focus in the Wildlife Division, though, because of hunting, it's mostly birds and it's mostly mammals. So a lot of those species, the invertebrates, the herps, the songbirds, those kinds of things, we can't spend a lot of time or effort on because we're not funded for that. This piece of legislation, which does have, has bipartisan support, it made it through the House last year, and then the session ended. So now it has to be re-upped again. It's introduced as HR 2773. There's a link down there if you do a search for Texas Wildlife Alliance, it will give you all the information about this piece of legislation. My understanding is it's money that's not brand new money. It's money that is going to be allocated to this. And for us here in Texas, this is a game changer. These are, I think it's $1.2 billion across the United States, and then we would get our share of that. But what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to now focus not just on the game birds and the game fish and mammals. We're able to focus on conservation on a grander scale. And really, when you talk about conservation, it can't just be on the white-tailed deer. It can't just be on a duck. It's got to be the entire ecosystem. All of that together is what makes those animals survive. And if those animals are surviving, then we need to have those others around so that enhances that. So this is a really, really valuable thing. Right now, there are 40 co-sponsors, including one here in Texas. And because it has bipartisan support, we hope that if you have a chance, reach out to your local congressman and encourage them to sign on as a co-sponsor. This bill was just reintroduced on April 22nd, so it's just now starting through the process. So anyway, I want to give a plug for that because it's, again, a game changer for conservation in the United States and Texas. So let's very quickly, I want to share with you, we have our own web page, the TNT program, Texas Nature Trackers program. This is what it looks like. There are 3 tabs down here. The Get Involved is iNaturalist, and we're going to go to that in more detail later. The second one is Target Species, and I do think I've got a slide in here, or I may have taken it out. But basically, if you want to find out what species we're encouraging people to look for when they're out using iNaturalist, that's where those lists occur. And then under projects, when you click on that, you get this page right here. These are the 12 projects that we are a part of or oversee. One of our largest ones is Herps of Texas. So that's all reptiles and amphibians. Used to be, it was that we had a frog and toad watch. We had the horned lizard watch. All of that was paper generated is now done through iNaturalist through this project. But you can see we have a wide range of projects, Bees and Wasps of Texas, Texas eagle nests. We know that the bald eagle is now doing great, but we want to monitor nest success and nests that are around the state of Texas. We have milkweeds, of course, monarch butterflies. Most of you probably have heard of them or are familiar with what's happening with them and their population decline. So monitoring the milkweeds around the state of Texas. And all of these require not me and my colleague Tanya, but it requires, this is only accomplished and successful if the general public gets engaged, and iNaturalist is the tool for that engagement. And here is, by the way, where you can go and look at target species by clicking on that middle tab. So you can see you can do by taxonomic group, you can browse by ecoregion. And then, for example, if I do plants, here are the plants that are of particular interest. And again, you can do that for all of these different taxa groups. So let's talk iNaturalist. iNaturalist is an online social network of people sharing biodiversity information to help each other learn about nature. Pretty simple. It is, the two goals are to connect people to nature and to generate scientifically valuable data that can be used for conservation. This project, this program was not developed by Texas Parks and Wildlife. It was developed by some college students in California. It's now a global, has a global reach and is used by conservation agencies, as I'll show you here in a moment, across the board to gather information that would beforehand we just couldn't gather. So basically, the simplest way to explain it is you download the free app onto your phone, you create an account with an account name and a password, and you go out and you start taking pictures using your cell phone. Take a picture of it, you share it with the iNaturalist community, and you can discuss your findings and find out what you're looking at. And so what's really cool about this is this is like walking around with a nature encyclopedia in your phone. And I know people love to take pictures of the meals or what clothes they're buying or whatever. Why not take pictures of nature too and help us learn what's out there and what's around you? You also educate yourself, because if you're ever in your backyard and you go, well, what in the world is that flower? You can use iNaturalist or its companion app, Seek, S-E-E-K. You could use that also. That's for kids and people that don't want to go through the complication of iNaturalist. You can learn what's around you. And I, one of the things, being a naturalist all my life, I like to know what's around me. I don't like to walk through the world and just go, I don't know what those are. They're trees, but I don't know. I don't care. We need to care. We need to know. And so stimulate your brain, learn more about what's around you. And especially with the BioBlitz coming up here in June, it's an opportunity to really get out and explore the world around you. So what this does, basically, when we're talking about creating this community or citizen science data, each observation that you put on iNaturalist creates what's known as a digital voucher for the presence of an animal. So all of these little dots and the different colored dots represent different taxa groups, represent the presence of a particular plant or animal. It doesn't tell you what's not there. It doesn't give you population numbers, but it gives us presence and gives us an idea of, okay, this species is located here. It's not over here anymore. What's going on here that's affecting it, and could that affect these over here? So there's all kinds of avenues of taking this data and applying it to conservation. Just to kind of show you what it looks like globally, this is as of yesterday. Globally, there have been 68 million observations by community scientists across the globe. Here in Texas, we've got over 4 million, we're approaching 5 million observations, which is roughly 6.9% of global observations. So you can understand why Texas Parks and Wildlife would be interested in this data. This is data that, again, we could not collect on our own. So you out there have the opportunity to contribute to conservation in the state of Texas by getting engaged with iNaturalist. All right, so we have users. You can see lots of people are using the app. Who's putting it together? And just to kind of prove to you, here is the Fish and Wildlife Service that is using BioBlitzes to gather data from their national wildlife refuges or other locations. So that's being done on a regular basis. State of Oregon has a big project going on using iNaturalist. Colorado, here's California, Florida. So you can see across the board, there are agencies all across the country, including Texas Parks and Wildlife, that are utilizing this data. So in Texas, well, how are we using it? Here are just a very few examples. the Herps of Texas project that I mentioned. So reptiles and amphibians don't get a lot of conservation attention unless it's a research project through a university or something like that, because there's not a lot of funding out there to study frogs and toads and snakes and lizards and those kinds of things. But through this Herps of Texas project, you can see that between 2012 and 2018, we had 3,800 records of tracked herp species tracked being SGCN that were added to the Texas Natural Diversity Database. A year ago, we added another 1,500 or so. We just got done curating the project again to add potentially another 1,000. So again, this is close, somewhere in the neighborhood between 5,000 and 6,000 records of amphibians and reptiles that we could not have largely gotten by a single biologist in a single county. So very, very valuable use of this project. Here's another example. This was some research that was done recently on the eastern spotted skunk. They're very nocturnal. They're very secretive. They're small skunks. A lot of people have never seen one. We wanted to they were trying to find out where exactly are these guys ranging in the state of Texas. So they used their traditional methods. They selected 10 counties in Texas. They put out camera traps, game cameras, track plates, live traps. They had over 8,000 device nights, which means that if a trap was out for one night, camera trap was out for one night, that's a device night. In all of that effort, they got 12 detections in 4 counties. That's not much data, but that's a fairly traditional way of collecting data on wildlife. But at the same time, they put out a request for the general public to become engaged through an iNaturalist project. As a result, they got 85 records submitted, which is a whole lot more than the 12 detections. 24 of those were confirmed eastern spotted skunks, and not just in 4 counties now, but in 21 counties, including 6 where they'd never been documented before. So again, they gain additional information, and it's largely because of the efforts of community scientists. I was at attending virtually a recent meeting of the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department commissions. And one of the presenters came on and was actually using iNaturalist data on squirrels, on gray and fox squirrels, to determine how their populations might be doing, where they're located, and would that have any possibility of extending hunting opportunities based on those records. So again, here's a practical application of iNaturalist data. And then we had, of course, we all know, we haven't been that far past it, that we had this huge winter storm this year. People were finding dead wildlife all over the place. We put together in a short order a project just to have people document what wildlife they were seeing. We were able to pull data off of there and determine what really got hammered. Birds, for example, a lot of any kind of seed or fruit eating or insect eating birds got hit pretty hard. You all may have heard about all the fish on the Gulf Coast that were killed as a result of this storm. So again, this is a way to react to a natural occurrence, so we can get the general public involved in helping us gather data. And then we have every year, and it just wrapped up, and we're still analyzing the data, so I don't have the 2021 data to present to you. But every year we have what's called the City Nature Challenge. Houston, the Houston Metroplex tends to be one of the top 3 in the entire world for this event. But even during the pandemic last year, when everything was shut down, we still saw a 30% increase from the previous year in terms of number of observers. And one of the neat things about City Nature Challenge, again, it just gets people outside looking around in their backyard, in their local park, wherever they are, and documenting nature. It's a pretty neat thing to do, and it's a way to engage people. And what we have found by looking at iNaturalist users is that once they get engaged in the City Nature Challenge, oftentimes they get that next year for sure. All of a sudden they get into it and people are logging 2,000 or 3,000 observations or more in that next calendar year. And then some of them get so good at it that they're actually teaching iNaturalist workshops themselves. So this is a great engagement tool to get people out in the natural world. And as a result of the City Nature Challenge back in 2020, we had over 1,700 research grade observations of 123 of those 1,300 SGCNs. And remember, these are focused on big metropolitan areas, so that's pretty darn good. And we'll talk about what research grade observations are here in just a little bit. In addition to that, 56% of all observations went to what's that term research grade. So that's the high quality data that we can use in the natural diversity database. The other thing that this does, and I mentioned it earlier, is that it magnifies the work of our biologists. So for example, in the 2020 City Nature Challenge, the Houston Galveston area, 84 community scientists to every one TPWD biologist. That's pretty amazing. And again, provides a huge amount of data that we otherwise could not get. The other thing that these kinds of things do, whether it's this project or a BioBlitz, is it leads to community support for conservation efforts. It can lead to cities making better habitat management decisions based on what they find at these places, for whether it's acquisition, restoration, or just general management. So all of these things are outcomes from getting the public engaged in iNaturalist and conservation efforts. So there are lots of different ways that projects can get going in iNaturalist. So I want to run through those just to kind of give you an idea. So first of all, every October we do what's called the Texas Pollinator BioBlitz. It's going to be a little bit similar to what happens in June when you all do your BioBlitz during National Pollinator Week. And it's just getting people out there and documenting things. So this is one style of project. This is a statewide effort. You can see when we last did it in 2019, we're doing it again this year. COVID kind of messed things up. But more than 33,000 observations statewide for this 3-week effort. And then you have what is known as, of course, the City Nature Challenge. That again is a 4-day event. It's gone on. It's a global event, and just wrapped up here at the end of April and 1st of May. And then of course there are BioBlitzes, and this is what I wanted to, what y'all have the potential to get involved with, engaged with, and I certainly encourage you to do that. It gives you all an idea, a better idea of what's in your Woodlands Township area. This was last year's event in 2020, and of course that was during the pandemic. So obviously there's not going to be as many people or as many observations. This year, hopefully though, that you'll see these numbers explode. But even with that pandemic going on, look, you've got 180 species of plants and animals documented. That's pretty impressive given the givens. But what a BioBlitz does, it's an effort to basically take a snapshot of a specific area in a specific time and date range. So basically you're going out with a big camera, if you could, and you take one picture and you'd be able to look in that one picture and see everything that's out there. Well, you can't do that. So iNaturalist allows us to do that, and they set parameters. So last year was June 22nd to the 28th. That date will change, and we'll talk a little bit more about this year's BioBlitz a little bit later in the presentation. But this is a very commonly used tool to get good information in short order for a certain amount of time. It can be done once a year, it can be done quarterly. Everybody has different ways of using BioBlitzes, and it's engaging as many community scientists as you can pull together in a short period of time. Then of course, there are site-based collection projects. Here's an example up in the Dallas area where they've got a park, and anybody that goes through there and takes pictures using iNaturalist, it goes into this project, and you can see they've got 7,400 observations, 1,170 species. And this is the kind of thing that can help lead to good conservation management decisions. You can also have taxa-specific collection projects. So for example, I used to work at Guadalupe River. We started doing butterfly surveys there, and we're continuing to do those. And we started an iNaturalist project to log not only what we encounter as the surveyors, but then the general public that visits there and might take a picture of a butterfly. That observation will come into a project like this as well. And then you could even do home base. This is what I do at my house. We've planted a lot of native plants for pollinators. We've documented just hit the 300 species number in a little 0.22 acre typical small front yard, small backyard. And from all these observations, I use it for phenology, meaning I take a picture every time something new comes into flower. So over the years, I can see when do I expect these to flower or these to flower, and then also try to document all the birds and butterflies and insects and everything else that come to the yard as a result of the efforts of doing that planting for pollinators. So you can do this kind of project at your own home if you choose to do that. So now we're going to get into the app because there's a lot to it, and I want to make sure that we go through it fairly in fairly good detail. When you get the app and you've created your account and you open it up, it's going to look like this. On the left is the iPhone, on the right is the Android. And to take a picture, to document something, these are the things that you've already documented, by the way. On the iPhone, you would just click on observe and you'd hit this plus in the green circle right here to to start the process. iNaturalist recently just upgraded what you can do on iNaturalist. There's the typical camera, so it's going to take a picture of the object through iNaturalist. You can also use your camera roll. Let's say you've taken some pictures and you want to and they're on your camera roll. You can go and select those and upload them to iNaturalist. Now on both phones, you can now record sound. So if you hear a bird up in the tree or a frog over here and you don't have any idea what it is, you can make a recording of that and share that information out. And just like you share the pictures, people will help you identify what in the world that might be. So all of those are the choices. And then now you can even submit if you don't have a photo. It won't become a research grade observation because there's no physical evidence of what you saw or heard. One thing to keep in mind, this is kind of what I call a pro tip. So you can either use iNaturalist, the camera is set up in iNaturalist, or you can use your cell phone camera. The advantage of using your cell phone camera is, let's say you take a picture of something that's a little far away. So when you look at the picture, it's kind of small in the picture. If you do that with the iNaturalist app, you can't edit that photo. But if you use your camera on your cell phone, you can edit the photograph, then go back and save it, then go back into iNaturalist and grab it from the photo file selection tab that I just showed you a moment ago. So sometimes I will use this when I'm taking pictures of things that are farther away. And if it's a close-up thing, I'll just use my iNaturalist camera. So again, that's something to keep in mind. So let's say we're going to first use the camera roll. So we took a picture with our cell phone camera. We now go in, we edit it. We want to select that picture. I click on camera roll. It comes up with all my photographs that are in there, just like I would if I was going to email it to somebody. I would click on this and get that little white and blue check mark and right there. And then I would hit add. And then what that does is it goes ahead and loads it into your observation. There's the picture up here. If you wanted to add a second picture, if I wanted to add this one as well, I could click on this plus sign right here. It would take me straight. I can then get right straight back here, select that picture as well, if I wanted to do it that way. And then from there, you just process the information that you would do just like you just took a picture of it. So it's pretty simple. So now let's say we want to record a sound. So I'm going to click on record sound. This is what it's going to look like. When I click on this button right here, that starts the recording. And then you can leave it on as long as you want. I did this one for 15 seconds. Down here, I'm going to hit save recording to stop it and to save it. And then when I do that, it comes over here. Now, it says, what did you see? Well, obviously you didn't see anything. Here's the recording right here. If you don't know what it is, but you know it's a bird, all you need to do is type in bird and it'll pull up birds and you can use that as a placeholder. If it's a frog, you can do the same, frog or a toad, and share it. If you know exactly what it is, you can start typing in its name and it will populate that for you as well. So you'll look it up by species name over here to type it in. This one I happen to know is a cardinal. So I go ahead and type in cardinal, it populates it for me and I am good to go. And here is what it looks like when you go back to your camera to open up, or back to iNaturalist to open it up. Instead of the photograph here and here and here, you're going to have this little symbol, which indicates that it's a recording, voice recording. All right, so now let's go back and let's go get something off the camera from iNaturalist. So we go ahead and again, we select those buttons there. We select camera, we go ahead and take a picture, and there it is right there. Now, again, if I want to add more pictures, I can hit this plus sign. It'll take me back to my iNaturalist camera, and I can take more pictures and add them as well. The next thing you're going to do is it says, what did you see? And this is where it really gets fairly amazing, frankly. When you click on that, the artificial intelligence in iNaturalist is going to generate suggestions for you, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. At least I think it is. Well, so I knew it was a Texas live oak, so I went ahead and I selected Texas live oak. But let's say you get your choices and you don't know which it is, you can just pick the top one, which is usually a family name or a genus name. You don't have to know exactly what it is. That's what all of those other iNaturalist users out there are able to help you with once you upload it. So I knew it was Texas live oak. The next thing I'm going to do is check my location right here. And that becomes very important right here. This ACC is accuracy. For our projects with Texas Nature Trackers, we need an accuracy of under 500 meters to make it valuable. You can see with the same image, two different phones, you can see accuracy 6 meters here. This one is 128 meters, and that may just be the satellite that those individual phones were using at that time. But if you click on that, what you're going to get is this, either the satellite image or the map image. You can move it around, pinch it with your finger and thumb, and exactly get that location and put it right there, and then hit save up here, and that'll get you set up for that. Notice it already has the time and the date stamped on there. You don't have to do anything with that. The next thing that becomes valuable sometimes is geoprivacy. The regular setting is open, which means everybody can see the coordinates exactly where that plant or animal was located. But you can protect that if you choose to. If it's something that's rare or something you want to share it, but you don't necessarily want people to know where it is. What you do is you click on that and you have three choices. You have open, which is the default. Everybody sees the coordinates. You can also obscure it. And basically what that does is puts a big box around your observation with a random point in there, so they can't really tell where it is within that big square. Or you can completely hide it and make it private. And then the only people that can see the coordinates would be people that you allow to see the coordinates based on the fact that you might have joined a project and uploaded it to that project. Otherwise, nobody can know exactly where it is. All right, so then you have to decide, is it captive or cultivated? And this is really important, especially for conservation. Like in my yard where I have all my native plants, they were planted there. I did not, they just weren't magically growing there. So they are technically, even though they're native and they're wild, they're cultivated in this setting. So I would have to select, go ahead and click on this and select or check this box and say that they are captive. And that's important because for conservation planning, somebody that's looking at native plants, for example, they want to know where they are in the wild. But let's say you're somebody that wants to start a native plant business. You could technically go in and try to track down through iNaturalist what things are being used in people's gardens and yards through this doing a search for cultivated plants potentially. All right, then the last thing is projects. You can join projects. We've already shown you some of the different projects that are out there. This is a list of projects on my phone. If you see a project that has a little toggle right here, you have to physically move that toggle to join that particular project. That is the case with our TNT projects. If you see a project listing down here and you don't see the toggle, what's going to happen is these projects are called collection projects, and they're just going to grab your observation automatically and pull it into their project. You don't have to do anything about that. The only ones you have to do are these traditional projects that have the toggle switches. All right. And then when you're done with that, by the way, let me go back one. When you're done with that, all you do is click on share and it goes ahead and it uploads it. So that's pretty cool. All right, so let's talk a little bit about BioBlitzing. So when you're out BioBlitzing, you're out trying to take as many pictures of as many different things in a short period of time as possible. When you use your traditional way of using iNaturalist, you have to do one picture at a time, one specimen at a time, go through that process and then upload it and then go to the next one. Well, if you're in a timed event and time is of the essence, you don't want to have to do that for everyone right at that moment in time. So what you can do is make an adjustment, and I'm going to show you that in just a moment on how you can do that, and then BioBlitz. But here is the upcoming Woodlands Township BioBlitz. It's going to be June 21st through June 27th, which corresponds with National Pollinator Week. Basically, why do you do these? Why are these important? Why are they valuable? They're a celebration of biodiversity. They really are. Find out what's out there. You'd be amazed what's around you when you start really looking. Finding and documenting as many plants and animals as possible over a short period of time produces that snapshot of biodiversity that I mentioned earlier. BioBlitzes can build community connections with natural environments, build understanding of scientific processes, create a natural history database for conservation planning, in this case within the woodlands. And then also brings together diverse communities for a common goal. So anybody can participate. That's the cool thing about iNaturalist. This is not based on economics or where you live or anything. It's available and open for every person out there. So this is your BioBlitz that's coming on. You notice when I printed this off this morning, 16 days, 15 hours, 20 minutes, and 20 seconds. Now we're a little closer to it, aren't we? So anyway, going back to what you can do when you're BioBlitzing using iNaturalist, there is a setting that you can do, and we're going to start with the iPhone. And what you do is you click on this little box, this little gear right here. And when you open it up, there's all of this information. You'll notice right down here, it says automatic upload. Well, it's automatically turned on. That's the standard. So you have to do one image at a time. But if you go and click that toggle off, what that's going to do is allow you to take a picture, save it, go over here, take a picture of the next thing, save it, go over here and take a picture of another thing, save it. And then later you can go back, switch this on, upload them, or go back and process them later, then switch them on, switch that tab back on, toggle back on, and then you can upload all your images. So you can do all the work of documenting, then go back later and do the uploading. That's how it works with the iPhone. With the Android, there's a couple of extra steps just because every phone's got to be, each one's got to be a little bit different. But here you would actually click on this little hamburger symbol up here. And then here you're going to click on settings. There's that same settings gear. Over here, this is going to be automatic upload. That particular one right there, it's already checked green, so that means it's on. When you uncheck it, that means again, you're ready to go and you can go click, save, click, save, click, save, click, save. Remember when you're done, don't forget to turn it back on, okay? Because it's most of the time it's convenient to just do one at a time. All right, so how do you get the pictures? How do you get good enough pictures to actually be able to figure out what in the world you're looking at? The first thing you should know is that iNaturalist is not 100% at identifying everything because there are so many different kinds of things out there that aren't easily identified to a species. So it may be a genus, it may be a family name, maybe an order. And so you don't have to know exactly what it is in order to document it anyway. There will be experts out there that can take a look at it and maybe help with the identification down to a species level, but it's not ever going to be 100%. A lot of insects, for example, or invertebrates have to be dissected. So you have to look at their reproductive structures, and that's not going to happen with a photograph. So keep that in mind. But when you're out there to get the best quality photographs, I wanted to share some tips that I've used over the years to enhance my photography. First of all, when you're doing close-up photography, you can use your standard iPhone without any device. But I have purchased this little thing called a Zenvo XENVO. It's a Pro Lens kit. It's got a 15 power macro on it that you attach to your phone. It's got rubber, the alligator clip is rubberized, so it doesn't slide around on your phone. You don't have to take off your phone cover in order to utilize it. And it takes these kind of incredible pictures. Just to give you an idea, that flower right there, that one flower right there, it's a female flower, is about 3 millimeters tall. And you can see the detail that this thing offered that I could not possibly get without that extra 15 macro power macro. So that's an option for you to explore that. I paid about $40 for it, and it works great. I use it. You can even shoot videos, believe it or not, with it as well. But you can get very good close-up photography, especially on small items like flowers and insects. So when you're going to photograph a wildflower, let's say you don't have the Zenvo, you take the best picture you can. Make sure you get as close as you can, get as much detail as possible. With wildflowers, plants, oftentimes I'll take multiple pictures. So I'll take a picture of the flower, I'll take a picture of the side of the flower that shows the stem and all the flower parts. I'll get a picture of the leaves, shows how they're arranged, what their shape and length is, and then a picture of the entire plant. Notice on a couple of these, I have my hand in here. You could either use a ruler. If we were in person, I'd give everybody a little 6-inch fancy dancy plastic ruler from our program, but of course we're not, so that's the way it is. But my hand is now my reference tool. So if I needed to measure how long this leaf is, I now know I could measure a certain length on my finger, and that would then equate to whatever the length of that is. So that's something to keep in mind for reference, because sometimes from a photograph, it's hard to tell, as we all know, whether something's big or small. All right. I see somebody wrote in that it's listed at 55 at Walmart, but Amazon it is cheaper. That's where I ended up. Photographing woody plants. Get as many pictures as you can of the leaves, of the stems. Sometimes you want to get a picture of the underside of the leaf because it's usually more hairy. So that can be a characteristic. It also is better at showing the vein arrangement on the leaf. You also want to make sure that whether you're taking a picture of a simple leaf or a compound leaf, basically the trick there is a little botany tip here. You look on the stem, and if there's a bud right there at the base of that leaf, that's a simple leaf. This one, there's no bud at the end of any 5 of these, so you have to follow the stem all the way down, and you'll find the bud down here. So this is a divided or compound leaf. Another thing, how are the leaves arranged on those woody plants? Are the leaves on the stem alternately on the stem, or are they directly across or oppositely located on the stem? All of that helps with identification. And then if you find flowers, this is by a way a Zenbo photograph of that Mexican buckeye flower, pretty good detail, eh? If it's a vine and you find tendrils, take a picture of it. It's a bark of a tree, take a picture of it. If you find thorns or prickles, take a picture of that, or the fruit or the flowers. All of that can aid in identification, especially if you don't know what it is. By putting up more pictures, it allows other people that are helping you to identify it, or the artificial intelligence of iNaturalist itself. Now, when you're going out to take pictures of other things like birds and mammals and things like that, having a camera is always valuable. I will show you how you can take camera images and easily upload them to iNaturalist through your web page, your iNaturalist web page. This camera is a Coolpix P900. This is a work issued camera. It's got a big old lens on it, so it expands out to 2,000 millimeters. It takes tremendous pictures. When you're photographing invertebrates like dragons and damselflies, what I would say is be patient. Anytime you're taking pictures of insects, they have those compound eyes for a reason. They can detect movement very easily. These were taken with a regular standard camera. And what I did to approach them, and I could do that with the cell phone too if I was very careful, is they are territorial a lot of the time. So they have favorite perches. So I find where they keep coming back to the perch and back to the perch. I sneak up to the perch, stand there very quietly, wait for them to return and take the picture. Now, a lot of you might go, well, I don't have time to do that. Hey, what's wrong with teaching yourself a little patience and enjoying nature in that particular manner? And every once in a while, you get a photograph where you have a damselfly sitting on the shed skin of a emerging dragonfly, which, you know, these guys can eat these guys. So that's kind of interesting dynamic there. In terms of butterflies, it's great to get pictures with their wings closed and open, but a lot of times their wings are going to be closed. Get the best picture you can, and keep taking pictures of them. These two, a lot of people would look at these and go, yeah, it's the same butterfly. Well, when you really look at it, you know it's not the same butterfly. But if you're not a butterfly expert, you may not know that. So when in doubt, take a picture of it, document it. You might surprise everybody. Sometimes too, the different characteristics of butterflies are best seen with the sun over here as opposed to behind you. So here's the little silhouette of a poodle, which is called, and as a result, this is the dog-faced butterfly. This one, the lines are broken up, which tells you that this is a cloudless sulfur as opposed to a large orange sulfur. So those kind of characteristics. So it's not only just having photographs from the sun behind you, but sometimes in front of you. With birds, if you get the picture, you can, and then edit it. You're going to be editing it anyway before you upload it to iNaturalist on your computer. Edit it, and then that way it'll help better identify what it is. If you get a picture of a bird in a silhouette, take it. Sometimes you can identify it. If you get a picture with two different birds, edit those so each one is its own observation. So you get two observations from one photograph. And then, of course, remember, in case of birds, nests can be included. Always helps to have the eggs as opposed to the young, because all the young look pretty much alike when they're little anyway. But the eggs can be very distinct and very useful in terms of identification. And animal tracks work, and believe it or not, roadkill counts. There are actually projects for dead on road animals that have been killed by cars and other vehicles. So I mentioned briefly that there's a web page. So when you create an account on iNaturalist, when you open it up on the computer, you have your own web page with your name there, as your profile information here, observations. You can edit observations. You can look at a calendar to see when you took photographs. You can join projects from here. You can also add observations from your little stick or your little card that you were using in your camera. So you would just click on upload or add observations. It's going to give you a screen that looks like this. You then open up your disk or your camera disk, select your photograph like this yellow crowned night heron right here, and then you upload it to here. This is what your next screen is going to look like. So this looks really similar to the app on your phone. So you're going to go and you're going to figure out what species it is. There's your date and time, your location. Now, here's one different thing. In order, if this was something you wanted to join a project to make sure you got the exact location, you would want to click on this little symbol right here. It would open up a map, and it would then, you can move the object around, pinpoint the map, and it gives you a good accuracy. Here's where you would join projects right here. When you're done, you hit submit one observation, and boom, it goes into iNaturalist. So very, very similar. The other thing I should say, the web page has so many things to explore and to utilize, and things you can do with it. If you're going to get into iNaturalist, check out the web page. It is very, very, as my colleague likes to say, that's where the party is. Your cell phone is a data collection tool. The website is where all the really cool stuff is going on. So after you do the BioBlitz, let's say you're going to participate in the BioBlitz in 3 weeks. What can you do after that? You've done your job, you've gone out, and you've documented things. Well, one of the keys to being a successful BioBlitz is that you want to try to get as many things identified to species as you possibly can. And so that means you have to have people IDing what is out there. So let's say you have a little penchant for butterflies or birds or whatever. You really like those things, and you want to help ID for people that took pictures of a bird that didn't know what it was. You can help them. So first of all, what I like to do is dig out all my wildflower guides and my plant guides and my bug guides and snake and amphibian. So I'm a naturalist. So I have a collection of books that is probably most people would think would be ridiculous, but I don't. So this is kind of my passion. This is what I do. So you can dust off your field guide. You can sit down. You can actually go into what's called Identify from the web page, and you can look up wherever you want to do. So here's North America. These are all the things in North America that people haven't been able to identify. You can also do it by species or by species group. So you can just do butterflies if you wanted to. Here we've done a search just for Texas right here. So these are everything in Texas. Now I want to get more specific. I'm going to pick butterflies. I started typing butterflies in here. This is what came up. I selected that. Here are all the butterfly and caterpillar images that have not been identified. So I can go through here and help these folks get their observation up to what's known as research grade. Remember, I mentioned that a little while ago. We'll define that again here in just a moment. Well, let's just take a couple of examples. So here is a caterpillar. I know that is a monarch butterfly. This is what they thought it was as well. But notice it's not research grade. There's no R up here with a green box. So what I'm going to do is I can click on agree right there, and it's going to gray that out, and it shows now it says it's been reviewed by me. So research grades means that 2/3 of the people identifying an observation agree with that identification. So now it's 2 out of 2. This is now a research observation. Let's take another example. Let's say I have this one, and I'm pretty sure that's a gray hair streak. but I want to take a closer look at the picture before I verify it. So I click on that. Notice it says up here needs ID. It also has right here, over here, here's Cody Stricker. If you agree with that, you can click agree right there. And then when you've done that, it's going to populate that. And now notice this changed to research grade. So I've now made this observation something that conservationists and other people can use as a verifiable record. So research grade, what is it? It is a verifiable observation. It has a date, it is georeferenced, has a latitude and longitude. It has a photo or a sound. It isn't captive or cultivated, and more than 2/3 of identifiers, as I mentioned, agree on the identification. So that is a research grade observation. That's what it is. So when you look at your list of things, you can see here are things that have been labeled as research grade. There's an example right there. Notice this one isn't. It is a green thread, but because it is a captive, I cultivated it in my garden, it's going to go down as a casual observation. It will never become a research grade observation, which is a bummer. But then over here, look at this. I have a wild plant that has not been identified or confirmed by anybody. I even took 4 photographs of it. So obviously there's another species that's very similar to it, or I didn't capture the right image. So sometimes your things don't become research grade because nobody can really identify, confirm what in the world it is. So why help with IDs? First of all, there are lots of people interested in nature. They need encouragement and help, including you. It helps move observations to research grade. It gives you another way to contribute to conservation efforts. It gives you the opportunity to sharpen your naturalist skills. And why wouldn't you do that? I mean, shoot, it's kind of fun, frankly. And so a few things iNaturalist does and doesn't do. It measures species richness. It measures where a plant or animal is at that point in time. It does not measure population numbers or the population health. It does not measure absence. You can't take a picture of this something here and go, see, it's not there. That's not gonna, you can't do that. You can use annotations, which means you can put labels to those images to help track, help other people look for specific things. Remember, the phone app is a data collection tool. The web page is where all of the really big time work can be done. So in conclusion, get out there and begin documenting for conservation. When the BioBlitz comes up in a couple of weeks, get out there. I mean, you don't have, if you just go out there and do 5 observations or 3 observations, or maybe 10 or 50 or whatever it is, you're contributing to your neighborhood, your community's understanding of the wildlife and plant diversity that exists in your neighborhood. And I've never been in the Woodlands, but I hear it's a beautiful area. And why, to keep it beautiful, you got to know what you have. And the fact that it's tied in with the pollinator BioBlitz provides you that opportunity to really focus on pollinators and find out, let's say you put in some native plants in your yard, or you didn't, you just have plants in your yard. Find out who's visiting, find out what's going on out there. The more we know, the better we can manage, the better we can practice conservation. If we don't do that, then we're not taking care of the natural world. We're not taking care of ourselves. Ultimately, we're not taking care of our children and their legacy and their future as well. So get out there and become engaged and involved. And with that, there is my contact information. Feel free to email me if you want to. I've got Tanya, my colleagues, her email is there as well. And then both of our iNaturalist account names as well. So you can join us and follow us on iNaturalist, or give me an email and I'll help what I can. So I'm going to stop screen sharing at this point, which I think I just did. And so yeah, we're back to the live thing. So anyway, I hope that was of some value to you all. And my camera's over here, so let me move my camera because there we go. All right. So anyway, I hope that was valuable, and hopefully it will encourage you to get out and help out with the BioBlitz that's coming up in your community, and get out and explore nature, man. It's all around us.
Thank you so much, Craig. So we do have some questions from a few of our participants. And just a reminder, if you have a question for Craig, go ahead and ask your question using the chat feature. We will get to it here in just a moment. So fantastic presentation, Craig. I think there are a lot of tips and especially around photographing and really being able to use iNaturalist as a educational tool for ourselves. That's where I found the most value for it for myself. And I think everyone else would get a similar experience. You did mention during the presentation how you use an additional accessory on your phone. One of our questions was, would you recommend any additional accessories like a stabilizer or an auxiliary light, anything in addition to?
I don't, I haven't had to even consider using a kind of a stabilizer. My hands are steady enough, at least so far, that I haven't had to do that. Extra light, usually your phone is such a good camera these days that I haven't had too much issue with that. I haven't been in a situation, if I was taking pictures at night, yeah, I'd probably have some kind of, light attached, focused. In fact, I did that the other morning. I had a antlion adult that was on my screen, and it was dark out, so I got my my big light, put it on there, and took the picture of it so I could light it up. But generally, that's probably more the exception than the rule. There are attachments for your camera that are zoom lenses. Some people, and there's lots of them out there. I have not picked one up yet, but there are, just like with that magnifier, or with the 15 power magnifier, you can get zooms that blow things up a little bit. I've seen a few pictures from a couple of my friends that have used them, and they like them a lot. So you could find something like that out there. That's probably a little more expensive, but I think it's under $100. But you could do that as well. So, but other than that, no, I just run around and do that, and it works really pretty well most of the time. But I use the Zenvo all the time. I mean, because I love photographing insects. The trick is to be patient and move slow to get close.
Good tips, very good tips. One question is about making observations. So we have a participant who has actually observed 2 caterpillars on their milkweed, and they're asking,
Awesome.
Should they take a picture of each caterpillar? Are those 2 separate observations?
They are, yeah, and I absolutely would, because you want to show that you've got more than one monarch or queen, whatever it is, caterpillar. So absolutely, I would document each one of those guys. Why not?
Perfect. And if you took a picture when it was in chrysalis, should you take an updated picture of that chrysalis?
You could, but here's what I would suggest. I wouldn't do it as a separate observation if it's the same chrysalis. What I would do is you can always go back in and edit your original image record and add a photograph to that particular record, so you're not duplicating records. So yeah, try to keep it all in one record.
Perfect. I think that answered the last part of that question. So you can add to an existing observation. That way the program isn't duplicating data. You're just updating the data.
Correct. And you can edit on your phone, but when you're adding extra pictures and things, I like to do it from the web page, just because it's a much more manageable to be sitting in front of a computer screen than on your little cell phone. So, but you can do it either way.
Wonderful. You mentioned all the things that we can take photos of. One person is asking, can you take pictures of scat?
Yes. Now, here's the deal. Make sure you get good pictures, and it may not be able to get to species. But yeah, absolutely take pictures of scat. Why not? There's actually a animal tracking app. Our state mammalogist has his own app that has scat and tracks and all of those kinds of things. So yeah. Every animal has its own unique scat, even if it's not always identifiable through a photograph. But yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. And someone did ask in the chat feature, do you mind defining what scat is?
Yeah, scat is animal poop.
A more pleasant way to address it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, bird droppings are really hard to do. So stick to the mammals. That's your best bet there.
Perfect. There were a couple of questions. One is asking about, let me find this one real quick. Using iNaturalist to identify invasive species that should be removed. And Craig, I think you would agree that's highly valuable. Here in the Woodlands, we do have an invasive species task force of volunteers that we actually work with to remove invasive species. So yes, we would definitely encourage you to photograph those invasive species. Make sure you can mark that location. That'll help us.
It's huge.
And that way we can approach that in the proper go through the proper steps to get that removed. But I think that would be definitely encouraged.
We just did it was just recently, there's a week for everything. So there was a week-long invasives week, and we actually started an iNaturalist project for people documenting invasives. So you could even do that in the Woodlands and do it as a collection project that's ongoing. And that way you could be kind of tracking where people are finding new invasives in different locations. So that could be really, really valuable, super valuable, actually. So in fact, there was a young man that photographed a beetle. I think it was a beetle up in Dallas, the Dallas area, and it turned out it was one of those tree borers that hadn't been documented in the state. And by taking that random picture and putting it on iNaturalist, somebody noticed it and they immediately started making efforts to try to not let that spread any farther than it could. So yeah, very, very, very valuable.
That's true. With this many people out observing things, there's always the opportunity to find something that we didn't know existed. So whether it's a new invasive species or just a species that we haven't seen because it is so difficult to find and observe, the more people that get out and are making observations, like you mentioned early on, then we have that data to make a change or take action to conserve or to remove in some cases.
Yep, exactly.
All right, Craig, we have I think maybe a few more questions here.
Sure.
Would you want photos from the past with the approximate date? So if you aren't uploading immediately.
Yeah, I historical photographs work great because take for example the Texas horned lizard. It used to be all over the state of Texas. There's large areas now that nobody's seen it in years. But historical records can be very valuable because, again, it adds to that understanding of where things were or where they should be. So if you know the date and you can put it in the location and put it on iNaturalist, you'll probably do it through the website, which is great. Because you can edit the photograph, you can make notes, whatever. But absolutely, in fact, one of the biggest users, he unfortunately just passed away recently. One of the biggest iNaturalist users in Texas, he was a world-class photographer. He put all of his old photographed pictures of birds and other wildlife on iNaturalist to create that historical record of where those birds were. So that's really valuable data. It's time-consuming, but it's very valuable data. I've done some of that, but I've got a long ways to go. I have to retire first.
Perfect. All right. So, Craig, I want to thank you for your time. That was a wonderful presentation.
Sure.
I will make a quick note. It was commented on in the chat. There is actually an iNaturalist Texas Invasives in the Woodlands project. So when you are getting into iNaturalist and looking for those projects, I believe, Craig, it will allow you to find projects that are in close proximity to you as well.
Yeah.
So look for other projects that are in the area, or you can
Exactly.
specifically type in the project name if you know it. But a Texas Invasives for the Woodlands group does exist on iNaturalist. If you want more information or interested in joining that volunteer project, please contact the Environmental Services Department. We'd be happy to give you more information regarding that program. If you have any further questions, and you are looking for Craig's information, you can contact Environmental Services. He did put it up on the screen, and I'll make sure to include it into an email to everyone that had registered, as well as a survey link. So be sure and take that survey. And this presentation has been recorded. We will get it posted on the Woodlands Township YouTube channel. I'll let you guys know when that is posted so you can go back and get those tips. And if you have any questions about our upcoming BioBlitz, please reach out. We are really excited and looking forward to getting everybody out for this week-long observation period. So get your iNaturalist on your phone, start practicing now, and we will see you guys all hopefully on June 26th in person at Rob Fleming Recreation Center. Craig, thank you again, and you've given us some great tips. We'll go out and use them.
Good. Get out there and help them out. The more you know, the more you know. So go for it.
That's right. All right, everyone.
Y'all take good care.
Wonderful day. Yeah, and great weekend.
Bye-bye.